Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this important hearing. I've been working on a reauthorization of my OCRA and an expansion of it called the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Act, as you know. And in researching this and in living with this issue for a while, I've seen some amazing things and some great things, including, and I'm not sure where in this hearing I'll tell some of the stories about both police who use crisis intervention training in a way that is very moving and very productive, and the same in our prison system. I guess what I wanted to ask you about is sort of the cost-benefit analysis of this, because we have so many people languishing in our prisons who probably, well, who certainly aren't benefiting by being there, and that we aren't benefiting by being there. And what we've seen with the kind of programs that we're talking about is less recidivism, all kinds of benefits from that. Can you talk a little bit about the cost benefit of crisis intervention training, of mental health courts, and other initiatives?
Yes, Senator. First of all, we think it's huge. We have two projects I want to just focus on for a minute. One is a project that the Council for State Governments is doing in New York City in the Rikers Island facility, where they did probably one of the most comprehensive examinations of who is in that jail suffering from a severe mental illness and what is their length of stay. And they actually followed up on all of the records and determined that people with serious mental illness were staying in jail twice as long as other individuals in jail. That's a huge cost, and certainly not contributing to their overall mental health. And so New York City is fashioning a response to that, where they're really developing centers in each of their courts, in each of the boroughs, looking at how they can intervene quickly, identify those individuals, and get them out of jail and provide the kind of services that they need. And they will be following the cost effectiveness of that approach. The second project that we have is under the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, which BJA supports, and is a local JRI site in Texas. And that site is really doing a cost-benefit analysis, looking at just 23 high users of the jails and the mental health and health services within that community. And taking those individuals from jail, putting them in supportive housing with wraparound services, and projecting the cost savings from that approach. And I think that will help raise awareness of how we can manage individuals with mental illness in our jail system that are particularly nonviolent offenders in a much more cost-effective way in the community, and with better outcomes for the individuals involved.
I've had a number of roundtables on this. One, our sheriff in Hennepin County, Rich Stanek, wrote an op-ed piece in the Star Tribune saying about a third of the people in his jails were had mental illness, and that's why they were there. And we've seen that putting people in prison with mental illness makes them sicker, costs us money. We have, I guess, 25% of the prisoners in the world are in our prisons, and we have 5% of the population. And a great deal of those are people with mental illness who aren't benefiting, who are, if our jails are overcrowded and costing us money, we're actually having to release people in states like California. But these people could do much better if they go to a mental health court. And a mental health court usually means that the prosecutor agrees to this, right? The judge, the arresting officer, everybody agrees that this is the best place for this person, and see if they can get treatment instead of going to prison. We're going to have another panel who will be talking about some of the tragedies that have happened because our police officers haven't gotten the right training, the crisis intervention training that has been so beneficial and is such a big part of this. Thank you. And I guess we'll move on to the next panel. I know we have some votes. So.
Mr.
Right.
Donald, thank you.
I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today, especially Mr. Early and Ms. Saylor. I know the experiences you related very difficult, especially for you, Ms. Saylor, and very difficult, but a good outcome for Mr. Early, which is inspiring. And I know your stories will help a lot of people know that they're not alone, and hopefully will enable Congress to make the reforms that we need, including more CIT, crisis intervention training. Thank you for what you do, Sergeant Paul. You know, I just tried to tell this as fast as possible. I went to the Columbia Heights Police Department, and it's a suburb in the Twin Cities, and they had CIT training. And I asked, first of all, give me some, idea of what the effect had been. And the sheriff wasn't there. But the county attorney was and apologized for the sheriff not being there. He had to do something. And he said, well, the day after he got the CIT training, he didn't kill a guy he would have killed. So I just turned to a police officer, a woman police officer, and said, could I get a more garden variety example, And she said, okay, garden variety. She was a policewoman. She said, garden variety. Okay. I don't know, about 3-4 months ago, I was out on the street and I heard a woman screaming, and I thought it was some domestic violence thing, but she was just screaming, and then she went to this railing on a wall leading down to a playground, and I recognized what was going on, kind of. And she said, by the way, she said, CIT training is something I use every day. I'll probably holster my gun once in my career, but it's something I use every day. And she said, so I was able to talk this woman. If she dropped, she threatened to drop, to let go, and if she had done that, she would have gotten, I don't know if she would have gotten killed, she would have gotten very badly hurt. Talked her off. She said that she had been sexually abused as a child, and that the abuser was had come back. He had left and had come back in her life. And she said, I told her that I think I could get you some help, and referred her to the community mental health services. She said, about 2 months later, I was working a community fair. The woman came up to me and said, thank you, you saved my life. And I said, okay, that's the garden variety story. That's the garden variety story. So thank you I really do believe that we need to have CIT training for every law enforcement official. I think it should be in the Justice Mental Health Collaboration Act, which thank you, Sergeant Paul, for endorsing. Thank you, Mr. Quam, for endorsing today in your testimonies. Would do that. Would give that in academies and in other training for officers. I've also heard from corrections officers what a difference it makes in. I was in St. Cloud prison, state prison, where they we're talking about the different. He said, I remember one officer saying, or one of the corrections officers saying to me, those things on TV on the weekend where they show these guys have to suit up because somebody's out of control. And they put on masks and they put on gear and all that, and go in there. And sometimes all you have to do is talk to the person, and it saves a lot of wear and tear. But let's talk about after the crisis intervention training. Judge Quam, you run a mental health court, and what is the difference? What does that do in terms of outcomes? In terms of outcomes for them, and for us, for everyone? What is the outcome of having that, and hopefully veterans courts, et cetera?
Thank you, Senator Franken. There's two different mental health courts. One is a commitment court where there's civil commitment. The other is what more people know, and that's we call them problem-solving mental health courts. And the statistics nationwide, not just in Hennepin County, are phenomenal for the effectiveness of courts like mental health court and veterans courts. And they work because they provide what Mr. Early suggested they need, and that's the services that someone needs in order to survive and thrive out in the community. That's one component. The other component that makes it effective is intensive judicial supervision. So there's a lot of check-ins, there's a lot of monitoring, and there's always the threat of incarceration if the person isn't following the path that they need. When you combine those two components, the statistics are amazing. I can't spout one off right now, but an incredibly high percent of veterans, people with mental illness, people with drug issues or dependencies can avoid reincarceration, have jobs, become the types of people that they have had the potential to become before they became involved in a mental health or problem-solving court.
And I know my time is up, and I know we have votes, but the cost benefits in terms not just actual dollars to the taxpayer, but in terms of the lives. This is a moral issue too. I know, Mr. Chairman, can I ask just Mr. Early to speak that, Judge Quam, anyone on the panel, and then I'm done.
Well, I went into jail and I saw people who could have been my son, so it was very personal to me. And I also read the statistics, and one of the statistics you were after, 85% recidivism rate for persons with serious mental illness in jails and prisons, 85%. 80% recovery rate for those same people if you give them, go through a mental health court, get into treatment, have wraparound services. The point that Senator D-Minn was making earlier about the cost benefit should be right on. We're spending that money. Senator Cruz talked about a lack of resources. We're already spending it. We're spending $30,000 in Miami, $35,000 a year to keep those frequent flyers going back and forth. We're not getting anything for it. Why not use that money for something that works?
Thank you all. Or did Judge Quam?
If we have time, I've just got a short story that brought the humane point to me. I was presiding over a commitment case once, and I saw from the file it was a guy about my age. Came into court. It was a guy who looked maybe 80 years old, 75 years old. Had schizophrenia beginning somewhere when he was in his 20s, spent most of his life on the streets or in jail or in homeless shelters. He couldn't talk very well. It was a very short hearing because of that, but he wanted to tell me something. And I told him, once we're done here, your lawyer will talk to you, make sure he knows what you said, and he'll come and tell me. So a couple of minutes later, the lawyer came in and said, this doesn't make any sense. But what he said was, I used to skateboard with you. And you know what he meant by that? He actually used to skateboard with me. He was one of my high school friends who I had parted ways with, became schizophrenic, and had a completely different life than he deserved. And that was a point where it hit home to me that this can happen to anyone.